Good evening. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Shrewsbury Planning Board to order. First order of business this evening, I'd like to review and approve the minutes from October 3rd, October 17th, and October 30th, 2024. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? Any questions, comments, concerns?
No question, Chief.
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
I was not part of the October 3rd meeting.
Okay, thank you.
There are a couple other people also who are not part of the October 3rd and October 30th, I think.
I was there, I recused myself from
Okay.
things, but I listened.
So should we take these separately then? So can I
I
get,
think so.
all right,
think
so
that-
can I get a motion for the October 3rd meeting minutes?
Make that motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. October 17th, can I get a motion for that?
I make a motion to approve the October 17th, 2024 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and the October 30th, 2024 minutes. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to, make a motion to agree to the October 30th, 2024 minutes.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you very much. Next order of business is to review and sign bills. So we do have a couple of bills in front of us this evening. First bill is for Bowman for 50 Centec Boulevard, their traffic review in the amount of $540. The next bill is Noise Control Engineering for 50 Centec Boulevard for the sound study review. That one's $4,900. And Graves Engineering for 299 Hartford Turnpike, that was site plan review for $1,810.68, total billing, $7,250.68.
I move that we authorize the expenditures as read by the chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. I just have you sign those. Okay, next up, board member comments. Does anyone this evening have comments that they'd like to bring forth this morning, or
Nope.
this evening?
No comments from me?
No comment. No comment, Chair.
No comment.
No comments.
Excellent. All right, Chris, staff report?
Thank you. So I believe we included the department update, the monthly update, in the meeting documents, but I just wanted to highlight a few items. So staff has been working on, with our consultant, on updating the hazard mitigation plan, which helps with funding through FEMA, but also helps us to assess potential hazards, especially in relation to climate change, and especially relevant in light of the recent brush fires that we saw across the nation. So we're updating that plan. That helps us to make sure that we're responsive to hazards, and it's a multifaceted approach with other town departments and stakeholders related to those opportunities. Staff also attended the Southern New England American Planning Association Conference, which was held in Springfield this year. It's a conference that brings together planners from Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and they present on a number of topics over 2 days related to planning activities and best practices. All three of our staff were able to attend. We'll be generating a summary of some of the relevant items that and lessons learned from that, and we'll be happy to share that with the board once that memo is developed. So it was a great conference. I think we touched on a lot of relevant opportunities, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some input into that. And lastly, staff has been working with the WRTA on their update and evaluation of their current service related to VIA and the bus routes. So we've been providing input along with that process and reaching out to stakeholders, hoping to make sure that our community is engaged in that discussion as they evaluate those service opportunities, improvements, and extensions. So we remain committed to public transit opportunities and have provided that input. So happy to touch on anything else in that memo, either now or at a subsequent meeting, so please feel free to reach out to our office related to that.
Great.
Just a quick question. On the hazard mitigation plan, are you in any way working with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, or are we on our own?
So we are coordinating with them on some of the data, so they actually did our update prior to this, but we selected a separate consultant for this round, but we're in touch with them certainly with, as a stakeholder as well.
Okay. Yeah, because we do have some planning hours with them, I think, that we can use, yeah. Thank you.
Great. Any other items? Okay. Okay. All right. On to meetings and hearings. And have you read the legal notice for the proposed parking site plan approval for Capital Property Investments LLC?
Yes. The Shrewsbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday evening, December 5th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Select Board's hearing room at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Avenue, to hear the application of Chris Keenan, 579 Pleasant Street, Quinn Engineering, Paxton, Mass. 01612, for site plan approval by the Planning Board as required by the Town of Shrewsbury zoning bylaw, Section 7F3, for a change in use that requires more than 20 parking spaces as shown on plans entitled, quote, Parking Plan 516 Boston Turnpike, Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, end quote, dated November 4th, 2024, prepared by Quinn Engineering, 579 Pleasant Street, Paxton, Mass. 01612, consisting of one page. The subject project is located at 516 Boston Turnpike on the southern side of Boston Turnpike and east of Lake Street within the Commercial Business Zoning District and consists in whole or in part of Shrewsbury's Assessor's Tax Plate 34, Plot 025000. A copy of the application, plans, and reports may be seen in the office of the Planning and Economic Development Department at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Avenue, Shrewsbury, Mass., and on the Planning Board website at www.shrewsburymass.gov, ongoing projects.
Thank you very much. Turn it over to you.
Madam Chair, Kevin Quinn with Quinn Engineering. I'm here on behalf of Capital Property Investments LLC. With me tonight is Felicio Lana. He's the CEO of Capital Property. My client proposes to lease space in the building at 516 Turnpike to develop a restaurant. The change of use triggered the site plan approval by Planning Board application that we filed. I understand that staff since then has felt that a parking plan would be sufficient, and we appreciate the consideration. The site plan in front of you is almost entirely an existing conditions plan. It is basically the building and parking have been, the building's actually was built in 1952, so it's actually older than I am, so that's saying something nowadays. But everything on that plan, almost everything on that plan that's depicted is an existing condition, with the exception of the white stripes for the parking spaces, some signs for handicapped accessibility, and a relocated dumpster. Everything else is as it exists. Because it is an existing site, there's a number of dimensional nonconformities, pre-existing nonconformities, because it's an existing site with a lot of existing things. We have listed, and if it's helpful to the board, I'd be happy to go through the waivers that we've listed as I guess I would say as a formality to ensure that we have agreement upon the dimensional aspects of this. And if that's helpful to the board, I'd be happy to go through the
Sure.
waivers. Okay. We asked waive section 7B, table 2, minimum lot frontage, to permit 100-foot frontage. 150 feet is required. Waive 7B, table 2, minimum front yard setback to permit a 30-foot setback. 40 feet is required. Minimum side yard setback to permit 0-foot setback, 15 feet required. Waive section 7B, table 2, minimum open space to permit 14.2% open space, 20% required. Waive section 7D3A3, manufacturing aisle width to permit widths as small as 15 feet, 24 feet is required. Waive section 7D3D1, landscape strip at public way, waive that entirely. A 15-foot landscape strip is required. Waive Section 7D3D2, landscape strip at other property lines. Waive that also. 5-foot landscape strip is required along adjoining properties. Waive Section 7D3D4, storage dumpster screening. Screening and landscaping for dumpsters is required. And finally, waive Section 7D3A5, maximum slope to permit 7 parking spaces which have slopes ranging from 6 to 7.2%. The bylaw permits 6% slopes of parking spaces. In general, I think it would be fair to say that this building is underutilized currently. This would be a first step for my client to begin bringing this property up to its highest and best use. And I think it's a great opportunity for the town to get a nice restaurant and see a building that's, as I say, underutilized, coming back to a more appropriate level of utilization. Can I answer questions?
The lane waiver, is
Yep.
that, Chris, did the fire department look at that, and were they okay with the sizing of the lanes in terms of gaining access to the site?
So I don't have a specific comment from the fire department. These are provided to them for comment. We haven't received a specific one. Again, I mean, these are existing conditions, and there's not a lot of room to make adjustments, but we can certainly, the board would like, more official comment from the fire department. We're happy to reach out and solicit that.
I'm just thinking in terms of, because it is a change of use, and it is a use that would be more apt to, not that this is going to happen for you, but may have a fire call here and there, so you want to make sure that you can get apparatus around, recognizing, though, there's not a great deal that can be
If
done.
it's helpful, I can show you, there's 2 areas in particular that,
Sure,
it's kind of like a pinch point,
Sure.
if you will. Boy, it's a long way for the board to look, but near the entrance to the site here, we provide 20 foot of space available. What has happened there is we have parallel parking to the building. So a 24-foot width is useful for vehicles if they're perpendicularly parked. They need to pull out, do a 3-point turn and leave. But we're parking parallel along that section of the building. We think it's sufficient, and 20 feet does comply with the 527 CMR. That's the width for a fire lane. We certainly want to hear from the fire department on that, but that's been provided. There's also 2 rows of parking in back, which again squeeze down to as little as 20 feet. And in that area, it is perpendicular parking. We think it's sufficient and able for vehicles to be able to utilize it. But we look forward to talking to them about that. Those are the 2 areas that are, that waiver is requested.
sure. I mean, that's my one question. Does anyone else?
I just have a general comment. So the change of use of this type doesn't trigger that they comply with the current bylaws, right? It's more for them to document these are existing non-conformities with the bylaw. So they are we both are getting into this knowing fully well that these are the current existing non-conforming parts.
Correct. The existing nonconformities are in relation to the lot, so the new use is somewhat separated. It does trigger the review by the board.
Yeah.
And certainly, I think if the site had more leeway to resolve those, we would certainly be looking to do so. But in this case, there's clear site constraints. So primarily, the trigger is that it's a use along with the number of parking spaces that triggers that threshold. But ultimately, the project as proposed is largely a restriping of the existing, so just barely meets that threshold.
Okay, thanks.
Any other?
Yeah. Kevin, where are the entrances to the restaurant gonna be?
To the restaurant proper,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a doorway right off of the parking area. But the restaurant itself is actually on the other side of the building, so the western side of the building. So there's gonna be a corridor through it's a short corridor because it's a narrow building. But there'll be a corridor through the width of the building to the restaurant, which is as I say, it's on the.
So it's gonna be, because my concern is I just don't want patrons because it is tight, having to navigate parked cars and oncoming traffic.
Yeah, what we tried to do with the parking plan is spread it out to make it usable without congestion. And I mean, it's such a tight site, congestion kind of comes with the territory. But what we tried to do is make the parking as non-congested, I guess would be the only word I can come up with. Rather than squeezing the parking in, we kind of spread it out a little bit, if that's helpful to you.
Okay, so the entrance is gonna be where in this show again?
All right. Let me get oriented here. Okay, so this is
Right.
Boston Turnpike.
Yep.
The entrance will be on this side in this area here. There's actually a corridor through the width of the building, and the restaurant is actually on the western side of the building.
Okay. So,
So there'll be no storefront, essentially? No storefront openings on the Route 9 side?
No, there's no intention of having a door in the front. At least,
these people are gonna have to navigate the parked vehicles and oncoming traffic. That's, I guess that is.
yeah,
what
I mean,
it
I would
is.
say, yeah, certainly to some degree, but we don't have, what we don't have at that exit is stacks and stacks of parking. We don't have racks of parking. It's all along the building. So people can go in, walk around the parking and they're not crossing through multiple layers of parking to get there, which couldn't really happen here anyway, but what we tried to do was spread the parking out so that it would be accessible to people.
I know it's thin, and I know you probably can't put a sidewalk in front of the parking spaces. That
That would
wouldn't work.
squeeze us even more.
Yes, that,
And I gotta tell you, we've done, I don't know how many parking areas we've done. And in the past, we used to urge clients, put a sidewalk in there, build a sidewalk. So many times, the people just wander down the middle of the parking area. They don't use the sidewalk. And it's bewildering to me, but it's a fact of life for us. I see so many of the parking lots we've designed with sidewalks that never get used. But on this site, a sidewalk would complicate the dimensional issues that we're dealing with to begin with.
and 15,000 square feet is a pretty big restaurant. It's only gonna have 40 seats?
No, it is 40 seats, and the square footage,
This is a single, the building in its entirety, is there other users?
there are other uses in the building. The restaurant is a lot less than 15, I think it's 2,400. 2,400 square feet,
Okay.
plus or minus, they're still
What are
finally.
the other users? Is it a,
There's a carpenter shop,
Kitchen cabinet.
kitchen cabinet shop. And some of the building currently is in use as warehouse, which I think my client would be happy to see it put to a
okay.
more productive use than warehouse.
For circulation, then, if you have warehouse and there's probably deliveries coming in, what is your delivery plan? Oh, and also, I mean, delivery plan for here as well,
We
knowing.
do show loading space on the site, which is in the middle of the parking area, which means loading will have to take place at off hours. There is a dock here which we show, and there's some access to the rear. The warehouse use is not, it's not an intensive use, it's basically just some spare space that Felicio has available to use for something that he needs to put somewhere. The intention is to put this building to a better use.
What type of restaurant's it gonna be? Do we know?
Yeah, it's Indian style, I believe is Bombay Kitchen? Is that the, Bombay Kitchen is the name?
Okay,
It's a respected
Franchise.
restaurateur, yes. Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Yes, can we see the floor plan, the seating plan?
I don't have that. I'm a civil guy. The architect for the restaurant has generated some general plans for it. But until we have an approval here, they've kind of ceased on their production of the plans. But we could certainly get you a plan if
Is
that's,
there a door in the front of the building now?
there is a door in the front.
Is it split in the front where there's a business on the left and a business on the right
It is, yeah,
currently?
yes.
What happens to the door? Does it go to the restaurant?
That door doesn't go to the restaurant. The existing door does not go to the restaurant space. The restaurant, if you're facing the building from Route 9, the restaurant will be on the right-hand side of the building. And the doorway is on the left, if I'm not mistaken. The access to the restaurant will be a doorway that will go in on the left side. There'll be a corridor through the center of the building.
I understand.
Will bring you to the restaurant.
So with 10 tables, I believe you stated 10 tables, they're
Yes.
four-seat tables?
Yes, 40 seats, yeah.
The board's supposed to take that at face value, that there will only be 10 tables without seeing a seating?
I would suggest the board write it into a decision that says this decision pertains to no more than 40 seats. That's certainly a way you can do that. You can certainly charge staff with reviewing. We can submit architectural plans to staff so they can ensure that 10 tables with 40 seats is what you get. I can tell you that Felicio's people have had direct communication with the restaurant people, and they had to downscale their plans to have 40 seats and 10 tables.
I would probably encourage a meeting with, we'll put it in our decision, but I would probably encourage a meeting with the building inspector sooner than later.
We
That's
did.
happened. That's why we're here.
We did.
Yeah, that's,
That's what triggered this whole,
'Cause this is a different animal than Worcester, Mr. Lana. So I would just tell you that
that was the first thing we did. We met with Patty and building inspector, plumbing inspector, electrical inspector, fire department. We showed them everything. We do have proposed plans for the seating. You can see all that. We can submit it tomorrow morning. We do have actual plans already 3/4 of the way done.
Kevin, did you see those plans?
we have plans, but they're not 3/4 of the way done. What we got were progress plans.
Progress, I should say.
In other words, those numbers you put on your site plan, you didn't pull them out of thin air.
No, that's absolutely what the plan is, to have a restaurant with 40 seats.
Okay.
Yep.
And the fire department still hasn't weighed in.
They
Officially.
haven't provided an official comment at this time, yet.
Okay.
So, so the restaurant takes up 2,500 square feet. Have we done, is the building you're taking 41 of the spaces, which is probably the supermajority of the spaces at the site.
Actually, there's a breakdown of square footages and spaces in the building and parking. The 42 spaces,
But in your application?
yeah, on the plan
Yeah,
sheet too,
it's
on the plan sheet.
Crazy.
It's so small.
Yeah, I couldn't read
Can't
it.
read it.
Sorry, so,
I can give you my plan if that's helpful.
yeah, so the, in relation to the parking spaces, so 41 spaces are required. They do have a breakdown of all of the users on the site. 25 of those spaces are for the restaurant, which is the 2.5 spaces per table. And so that breakdown is consistent with the 40 tables. And so, during the building process, when they go for the building permits to renovate the space, that interior plan would be shown. And given the parking on the site currently being at the maximum at that 40 spaces, that they would not be able to have additional tables beyond that. So, without returning to the board.
Are all the other uses on the site allowed uses in the commercial business zone?
They're either allowed or they're pre-existing non-conforming.
But the math checks out based on the use and
Correct.
okay, for what's on Kevin's plan,
Correct.
for parking, for total number of parking spaces.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought there was an Indian restaurant that was going in next door, too. I think we approved one.
Yeah,
Is this
in-
the same user?
No, in the old Deja Brew space is what
Yeah.
you're saying? Yeah,
I don't know that it ever came to fruition, but I remember.
I don't think it did. Any other questions, comments from the board?
So you want to hold it open just for the fire department?
Yeah, I think if the board is willing to continue this, we can look to get some comments back from the fire department. And also give us the opportunity to take a look at the progress plans, if that's, okay.
Yeah, I would encourage, like, those big Cisco trucks. I don't know how they're gonna get out of there once they get down there for deliveries.
Yeah. All right, so is there a motion to,
Sorry, it's a public hearing, so
oh,
we should.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there anyone here this evening that would, from the public, that would wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to our next meeting in January.
Motion to continue the meeting to January.
Is there a
Sorry,
second?
we just need to do a time and date
Yeah,
certain.
what
so
day
Sorry.
is that?
I don't know.
let me get- That was
January.
January 2nd.
I will be in Barcelona, so have fun.
All right. So there's a motion on the table to postpone or to continue this hearing till January 2nd at 7 PM. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I will see you. Have a good holidays.
Thank you, you too. Next up this evening, we have the proposed gas station site plan approval, Lake 20 LLC. This is a new public hearing, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'd like to ask the clerk to read, I think,
I have to recuse myself.
okay, I will read it. Wear multiple hats, or does one of you guys want to read it? There you go. If someone can read the legal notice?
Shrewsbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday evening, December 5th, 2024 at 7 PM in the Select Board's hearing room at the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, to hear the application of Yetco Energy, 313 Boston Post Road, Marlborough, Mass. 01752, for site plan approval by the Planning Board as required by the Town of Shrewsbury zoning bylaw, Section V11F3, to construct a 7,015 square foot retail building housing a gasoline service station, convenience store with drive-through window, and a 4,825 square foot car wash as shown on the plans entitled Site Plan, Site for Proposed Development dated June 21, 2024, prepared by Civil Design Group LLC, 21 High Street, Suite 207, North Andover, Mass. 01845. Stamped by Philip R. Henry, P.E., consisting of 22 pages. The project is located at 193 Hartford Turnpike, easterly of Lake Street, and northerly of Hartford Turnpike, and consists in whole or in part of Shrewsbury's Assessor's Tax Plan, Plate 52, Plot 125000. A copy of the application, plans, and reports may be seen in the Office of Planning and Economic Development Department of the Richard D. Carney Municipal Office Building, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury, Mass., and on the Planning Board website at www.shrewsburyma.gov, ongoing projects. And this is signed by Shrewsbury Planning Board, Julie Hallstrom, clerk. Well, previous.
Good evening. My name is Donald O'Neill. I'm a lawyer in Worcester, here this evening on behalf of Yetco Energy. We have been before the board previously in connection with the, basically the same plan, but needed to withdraw and resubmit due to the change in membership that took place, and so that we would have an appropriate number of members voting. So some of this you've heard before, but I know we also understand there's a new member.
Who has to recuse himself, unfortunately.
Okay. So to be brief, as mentioned in the legal ad, this property is located at 193 or 190 Hartford Turnpike on the corner of Route 20 and Lake Street. There's two existing one-story masonry block buildings on the property that are kind of run down and in bad condition. Our proposal is to demolish those two structures and to build a new facility which basically has a gas station, convenience store with a drive-through window component, and then also another quick-serve restaurant of some sort in that building, which is 7,000 square feet, give or take. And that restaurant would depend upon, to be determined, basically, in terms of the use. But they would all be within that one building, same entrance. We have a parking provided for customers at that location of 45 spaces. There's also an additional 10 spaces for employees that are to the rear of the property, a separate parking area. We've got 6 gasoline pumps for passenger vehicles in front, and then there is a 2-lane, high-speed diesel fueling provision to the rear of the property, which is accessed by a separate driveway. In addition to that building, we're proposing a 4,800 square foot car wash closer to the Lake Street location. That has an additional parking for 6 vehicles there, and I believe it's 13 vac stations that go along with that. We are proposing the usual amenities in terms of landscaping, buffers, for the facility, and have designed a plan to address the drainage issues that are associated with the development. Philip Henry is the civil engineer who's worked on the plan, is here this evening, and I'm going to ask him to kind of walk you briefly through this, again, knowing that you've heard it before. And also, we are aware that that you have received correspondence from the Demoulas Supermarket, Inc., which operates the Market Basket grocery store across the street. They've expressed some concerns about the traffic, primarily traffic, I believe, on Route 20, and the left-hand turn option that we are seeking your approval for, as well as some issues related to the Lake Street signal. We feel that the ultimate deciding agency in that regard is Mass DOT. And of course, anything that we do or the board does or anything else, not so much the board, but it's all subject to Mass DOT. And we are going through a MEPR project for this project. We're about halfway through that. As part of that process, they do look at issues such as the traffic on both Lake Street and also onto Route 20. And there would be a further separate review by Mass DOT, separate from the MEPR process, that also looks at access onto Route 20. And ultimately, any decision in terms of our intention of being able to take a left-hand turn there is, of course, subject to their approval. And it's our hope that the board would allow that process to play out with Mass DOT. And we feel quite sure that if they determine that they don't think that it's safe, they're not going to allow it, regardless of whatever the board does. So if you were to issue an approval which is non-restrictive and just leaves it as proposed, it's all subject to Mass DOT in any case. And we have received some positive feedback from them, or certainly nothing negative with respect to that. The traffic situation has been reviewed by the town's peer review. They did not recommend or suggest that there should be a restriction on left turns onto Route 20 coming from this location. And, we're hoping basically that this could be approved without a restriction in that regard. And I do say Bob Michaud is here from MDM Transportation Consultants. And I'm going to ask him basically to go through the points that were raised in the letter, and also answer any questions that you might have in that regard. So
Okay,
I think
great.
I'll turn it over to Phil now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Phil Henry with Civil Design Group. Chris, do you have the ability to pull up the site plan?
This USB wasn't working, so.
Okay.
We've got this loading on the computer, and what I'm gonna do is go to the site plan component of.
I guess, well, considering that everyone in this room has heard our intro before, and Don gave a fairly comprehensive intro to the site layout, and also understanding that site access is a hot topic, I guess I'll spare you some repetitive knowledge. But however, with that being said, I'm happy to answer any specific inquiries. I will tell you that since we were last in front of the board in August, we've been working through the plan with Graves Engineering, and it looks like on September 18th, they issued what I would consider a clean letter with one additional item at the end, which was adding some drainage details. The package that we submitted yesterday to Louise includes that updated detail in that site plan package, as well as the nomenclature added to the grading and drainage plan. So, short of that, I think we're going to get into site access and circulation with Bob. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any specific questions as it relates to the technical nature of the civil engineering portion. Otherwise, I'll just answer any questions as they come up.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Robert Michaud with MDM Transportation Consultants. Good to be back before you. On the presentation board is an outline of the site, some of the key characteristics of the site, which we've reviewed with the board previously. This is an outcome of earlier discussions that we have had with Mass DOT and the access solution that we've developed, which is still subject ultimately to Mass DOT review and approval through the access permit process, is still very much in play in discussions with Mass DOT as we proceed through the MEPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act process. So there are going to be a lot of technical eyes on this, but I want to stress to the board that ultimately, as Attorney O'Neill had indicated, the disposition of the driveways, the number, the location, and any potential restrictions that Mass DOT feels are appropriate or not necessary, their choice, will be subject to their determination. The board might recall that the most easterly driveway location is intended to provide direct access to the diesel fueling pump to the rear of the property. That's right here. That's an enter-only driveway. It has a dual purpose in that it also allows access to the drive-through component of the retail area of the site, the drive-through facility, and of course to the pump area. That is augmented by a second driveway, which would allow a secondary means of access more directly to where the vehicle fueling positions are located in the main parking field. And will also allow, under the proposed design, the ability to turn right or left from the site. We've evaluated that location. We've tested it for sight lines, for operations, for queuing. We feel that it presents an appropriate location. And again, to the extent Mass DOT sees any reason to restrict particularly the left turn movement, that is subject to ongoing discussions with them. The importance of that movement really relates principally to tractor trailers that would be refueling at this facility and would be destined to go back to the Route 9 area eastbound. This provides the ability for that movement. which otherwise, in the absence of that left turn movement, would not be possible at all. I will also point out to the board that that particular movement by tractor trailers is a low volume movement. It's estimated at about 2 vehicles per hour. That's in line with the intermodal truck terminal, which is located immediately to the east or page right of this facility. That site does not have any record of safety deficiencies or high crashes, I will point out. Nor does it have the direct benefit of the gaps and signal operations that this driveway has based on its proximity to that location. In addition to those driveways, of course, we have the Lake Street driveway. That will be a low-volume driveway. I want to emphasize that to refresh the board's memory. This slide presents a snapshot of various peak hours and the relative increases in trip activity we expect would occur by the site. And as you see in the upper left corner of this drawing, the Lake Street corridor is expected to generate on the order of about 15 new total vehicle trips over the course of an entire hour as a result of this project. It's a very modest increase. And during the weekday evening peak hour, that's a little bit less. It's about 12 vehicles per hour. And on a Saturday midday, 16 vehicle trips per hour. The function of that driveway and the importance of that driveway really relates principally to the car wash facility, in that if someone were destined to, say, Demoulas Plaza across Route 20 and wanted to get a car wash, they could easily turn into the site at that location before continuing the trip, get a car wash, return to Lake Street, and continue the trip. Certainly there are options for folks who may be inclined to use that driveway as a matter of convenience. If they want to get back to Route 20, they could certainly use the central driveway to do so. We do not expect that that driveway, under any peak hour or any period of the day, frankly, would be a high-volume driveway. And it's oriented in a way that facilitates the principal bulk of volume from the site, which will be pass-by traffic. The types of uses that are being proposed here principally generate activity from existing traffic streams. This is a facility of convenience. Folks who are inclined to get gas or coffee or a car wash, for that matter, are for the most part already on Route 20 or Lake Street as they pass by the site. So again, we don't expect this to be a high new traffic generator. And it does provide sufficient accessibility and options for patrons to the extent it's more convenient to use the Route 20 driveway for either coming in or leaving. That's an option with a secondary means of access via Lake Street. Circulation-wise, we've also conducted queuing analysis of the drive-through facility itself, which is designed to accommodate a throughput capacity of up to 130 vehicles per hour. That's how much theoretically a car wash can push through that tunnel. We do a lot of car wash facilities, Scrub-A-Dub, Washville and others. And we know that this design, which is pretty prototypical of current standards, has a high ability to process vehicles and, in this case, has extensive on-site queuing ability without influencing or impacting the ability for other portions of the site to function efficiently. We have also tested the maneuvering requirements for, in this example on the screen, a large tractor-trailer vehicle. As I mentioned earlier, the vehicles that would be traveling westbound would have this first ability to turn into the property, circulate to the back of the property through the pump area, and then be able to exit the property either as a right or a left turn movement. And what we've modeled here is the left turn movement. So the design is specifically accounting for that type of a maneuver. We've done the same thing for tractor trailers in the exiting right. And then finally, we've also looked at the fire apparatus turning requirements throughout the property to make sure that everything was properly sized. I'll emphasize the importance of having a driveway on Lake Street, and that is, while it's a low-volume driveway for this particular site and the range of uses that are on here, it also provides a more direct means of emergency vehicle access to the property. So it's important that that driveway be part of the plan for that reason, along with the convenience it affords mostly pass-by trips to be able to easily access the site from the Lake Street area. Operationally, I will point out that the levels of service, which were all subject to peer review, operate well below capacity. The only area of extended queuing is on Lake Street. That is an issue that is being dealt with through mitigative efforts that are in discussions between Demoulas, the town of Shrewsbury, and Mass DOT as part of a monitoring provision for that particular project. I will point out as well that that queuing condition exists in the weekday evening peak hours principally. It is not a morning issue. It's not typically a midday issue. But when it is an issue, principally during weekday evening peak hours, those hours are the lowest traffic generating periods for car wash and coffee facilities, and the amount of traffic that is inclined to use it by this site during those particular hours is de minimis. And there are options to that driveway, which I pointed out to the board, which would include those driveways on Route 20. So to the extent there's an inconvenience because of long queuing on Lake Street, there's an opportunity for patrons to alternatively use this central driveway along the Route 20 corridor. So in conclusion, this project is not a high traffic generator from the perspective of adding new trips to the area. We continue to work closely with Mass DOT through the MEPA and eventually the access permit process for what you see on the screen today. We expect that the outcome of that process will be substantially similar to what the board sees before them now. But we also acknowledge that ultimately Mass DOT has the ability to restrict access and how driveways function. And we will rely on their opinion through that access permit process as it unfolds. Glad to answer any particular questions. I will point out that we are in receipt of the Demoulas letter. We understand their concern that Lake Street operations are critical from their perspective, of course, in particular because that's a principal means of having their customers get to their site. And so I have had a specific discussion and will continue to have discussions with their traffic engineer, who's here tonight, I believe, on appropriate ways in which this developer might allay the concerns that have been expressed about how this project relates to the Lake Street corridor and the Route 20 corridor. Ultimately, the decision on that access rests with DOT, right? And so, again, want to emphasize that. So I appreciate your time and glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
So, just starting off, Bob, what happens if MassDOT comes back and doesn't allow for those two, the curb cuts, the middle curb cut? I'll
Yeah, the
call it,
central driveway.
the central driveway? What happens specifically with the tractor trailers?
Sure. What will likely happen is if you think about the convenience of how commercial vehicles need to refuel along the Route 20 corridor, Flynn's Truck Stop, for instance, is one potential location. This is another. Those types of vehicles, in an instance where left turns were not allowed from this site, would simply not go to this site if they needed to then reverse direction to return to the east. It's simply not convenient. It's not possible for them to do that.
So would that then perhaps prompt you to revisit this configuration and take those diesel tanks out of play?
No, if you look at what happens very next door to us, actually, at the intermodal facility, the truck terminal next door, 3 out of 4 turns out of that driveway are right turn tractor trailer movements. The principal movement of tractor trailers along this particular stretch of Route 20 are westbound, they're not eastbound. And so in that vein, commercial vehicles, which would represent a higher proportion of the business that we expect would go to this facility and use it, would be a right-in and right-out type movement. So there's value to that component of the site. You know, out of the 6 to 8 transactions that theoretically could occur by refueling at that pump, and it's no more than 6 to 8, that's as many as it can actually process, the bulk of those, at least 4 out of the 6, are likely to turn right as a matter of existing observed patterns along Route 20 and the convenience in which those types of turns can be made from this site. So we think there's value to allowing the left turn for the, you know, the balance of trucks that may be inclined to use the site, but it's not a fatal flaw if it gets restricted, frankly. From a passenger vehicle perspective, we expect there to be about up to 100 left turns an hour by passenger vehicles during the morning, particularly for the coffee component. That shifts down to about 50 per hour, 1 per minute at weekday evening peak hours or Saturday middays. In the event that a restriction were placed on the left turn movement, there would be 2 viable means of returning to the east. One would be to simply make a right turn onto Route 20 and proceed to the left turn lane at the signal and make a turn there. Or alternatively, depending on the time of day and the convenience of doing so, to use the Lake Street exit point to get to the signal. That will be a customer discretionary movement. I will point out that there are competing uses along the Route 20 corridor for coffee shop in particular that would most likely be more convenient for folks who are traveling eastbound in the morning to visit and frequent. You know, those turns, while we're designing the facility with those types of volumes in mind, is going to be market driven based on convenience. The morning is not so much a queuing issue on Lake Street. It's not a queuing issue in the westbound direction in the morning. It's not an issue on the Saturday middays. The weekday evening peak hours, which both the monitoring report for Demolas indicate and our own studies indicate, there are substantial queues on Lake Street during that particular time of the day. It would be rather foolish for a customer to want to fight their way into that kind of a queue when they have the much easier and direct, convenient method of going directly to Route 20 from the central driveway. So we think there's sufficient flexibility in the access solution that we've developed that there is not a strict reliance on Lake Street in the event that the driveway got restricted.
Okay. And then how are we looking to stop or minimize, I guess, because what I'm hearing from you is that first turn lane, that first driveway.
First driveway, yes.
That is essentially a dedicated truck driveway.
It is not dedicated.
Not
to trucks.
dedicated.
No. That would be the first opportunity to use the site. If you're a trucker, and the truckers who use Route 20 use it regularly, they're very familiar with it, they would become familiar with this site as well. That would be signed to reinforce that it provides the means of access to the diesel fuel position and would become the primary truck route for that purpose. But it also provides the first opportunity for a patron who is interested in going through the drive-through to use the driveway to go behind that building and through the drive-through lane.
Has it been looked at, though, because I'm assuming I'm coming from Lake Street.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go onto Route 20 to turn in to go get my coffee.
Sure.
I'm going to drive through. So you're going to have queuing coming in from Lake Street and potential in the morning. And everybody needs their coffee, right? You could potentially have queuing up in that truck lane as well. How internally is that being dealt with?
Sure. So the vast majority of coffee-related trips are going to be drawn from Route 20. It's simply based on the volume of traffic that's on Route 20 relative to the traffic volumes that are on Lake Street, particularly in the morning. There are multiple times the volume of traffic and customers on Route 20 as there are on Lake Street. We've accounted for that in the trip generation and distribution assumptions. including the coffee component, which have been subject to peer review. They've concurred and agreed with our projections and our methodologies. Mass DOT has reviewed that same material and agrees with the trip generation assessment and the distribution assumptions that we've used. So that's accounted for, and it is absolutely possible for somebody to make what is a very convenient and easy left turn into the site from the Lake Street corridor, if they're going to Route 20, to have a more direct means of getting to that drive-through. And then on the exit, they would have the ability to, at their election, either turn left from the central driveway directly, which we've modeled and simulated and show has ample capacity to occur safely, or to return to Lake Street to continue where there is in fact ample capacity in that particular time of the day. So we're confident that the coffee component, which is going to be the higher generating piece in the morning particularly, will not have a negative influence on the queuing and operations on Lake Street. And there are options, if someone were more inclined to want to get back to Route 20 first to go through the drive-through, they could do that, get into the left turn lane and enter that easterly driveway for the same purpose. So there are options.
Okay.
Also, that drive-through, I don't know if this is what you were getting at, but the drive-through for the coffee is independent or exclusive of the truck lane. So there's actually two drive-throughs back there. So
Sure.
they don't operate, they're not dependent on.
They're not. Okay. Any other board members have questions?
Yeah,
Sure.
I have a couple. So coming out of the site onto Route 20 to take a left turn, especially for those trucks,
Yes.
how many lane, I'm assuming it's at least 4 lanes, right? To take a left turn?
There are actually, cross over 2 lanes, actually, I've actually got a simulation model of this, but the way that would work is that if you look at the diagram, you would actually be crossing 2 lanes when available gaps were made, right, into what is essentially a central gore area, median area of Route 20, while you have clear and unobstructed sight line to eastbound traffic, right, in that central area, and then you would proceed to either one of the lanes on Route 20 eastbound from that point. So it's what I would call a staged crossing. You'd cross 2 lanes into that median area, and when an available gap became available, you would continue that movement to go eastbound. I will point out that the signal phasing is such that there are going to be a regular number of gaps that are created very close to where the signal is that will make it pretty convenient to exit from this. We've seen this in the simulation models that we've used and that we'll be sharing with Mass DOT. And it shows that there is very minimal queuing on the driveway itself from the facility, between 1 and 2 vehicles on average, and no more than 3 vehicles during the highest peak hour for that particular driveway. So it's a fairly convenient movement, and frankly, there are many locations along Route 20 where left turns are in fact allowed. Most of, in fact, the commercial driveways that exist along Route 20 have unrestricted driveway access, and that includes the intermodal facility, the truck facility just east of us. The benefit of where we've placed this driveway is that it is proximate to the signal where gaps are created. And it's along a straight, flat section of Route 20, unlike other commercial driveways that may be, much more inconvenient because they're located on downgrades where much higher speeds are occurring, or where signal controls and the associated gaps are not being created. So again, we're hopeful that this will be allowed by DOT. Early discussions with them suggested that they are not ruling it out. But we're also acknowledging that there's at least a possibility that they could restrict the driveway, either through monitoring and testing and then restriction, or restriction from day one. We don't know. But that restriction is not going to imperil the project. It's not going to materially change the impact of the project. It will simply divert trips back to the signal where they can then reprocess to go east.
The intermodal facility that you referenced east, Is it okay to ask which one is that, like?
I think it has a, I wanna say it's a CSX, facility. It's immediately to the east of us. I don't have an aerial
Yeah.
diagram, but the commercial driveway, which is, probably on the order of about 75 to 100 feet or so away from, east of this property, is that facility. It's immediately, in this vicinity. It's opposite the Demoulas exit driveway. That driveway serves approximately 10 to 12 tractor trailer trips per hour, based on the counts that we conducted.
And the, from, after the car wash, to take a left turn onto Lake Street,
Yeah.
that would be difficult.
I don't think people would do that, and here's why. If you're coming out of the, well, if you're coming out of the wash tunnel, there's a good chance you're gonna go to the vacuums, which are right here on the site plan, right? If you really don't wanna deal with the Lake Street traffic, you don't have to. Simply go to the central driveway, you make a right turn on Route 20, and you make a right turn on the Lake Street. So that's one likely option. It depends on the time of day. If you're at the vacuum pumps and it's in the morning, or it's in the mid-afternoon, and queuing is not an issue on Lake Street, you probably just go directly to Lake Street and make that turn. So the point is that customers are gonna find the easiest and most convenient path, necessarily, just as a practical matter, depending on the time of day, and they will become familiar with the site. The car wash facilities tend to have membership, high membership rates, where folks buy a monthly pass to use the facility. They'll be very familiar with when the best time to use the facility is and which driveway makes the most sense, depending on time of day. Typical driver behavior.
One last one. What is that cross-hatched area near the exit to the Route 20 that would be heading right,
Yeah.
that thing?
That is a do not block the box marking. Its principal function is really to avoid a circumstance in which a left turn would like to happen into the left turn lane, right? If the queue began to extend to where that box is, it would ensure that there's the ability for a vehicle to get out and store in that left turn lane under that circumstance. Now, quite frankly, it's not a critical part of the design. It's something that we're suggesting. It's not necessarily something that has to happen based on the volumes that we project would happen at that driveway. It will be a low-volume driveway. Its effectiveness, quite frankly, is probably not significant. And we're showing it for illustrative purposes, really. And it's not a critical part of the design.
Okay, thank you.
You know?
Is this work within Mass DOT's Route 20 widening limits?
It is. This is the section of Route 20 that was recently reconstructed as part of a MassWorks grant fund, and it is consistent with the Route 20 Corridor Master Plan. This is the first part of the master plan that was actually built. So all of the infrastructure here is brand new, essentially. These improvements were built in a way that coincided with the Edgemere redevelopment, the Demoulas Plaza redevelopment. It contains design elements that address pedestrian accessibility. It addresses previously recognized safety concerns and issues, and enhances the capacity of the intersection based on the signal timing and phasing and the new signal equipment there. So this is all brand new. And it is being monitored as a function of the Edgemere project, the Demoulas Plaza project. The only deficiency that has been identified so far is in the Lake Street approach during certain hours of the day for queuing purposes. As I mentioned earlier, that is an outcome of the monitoring process that the Edgemere project was obligated to undertake as an outcome of its MEPA review process. Likewise, we are likewise going to be subject to some level of monitoring as part of the MEPA process as well. It's a common outcome of that process. But all of this infrastructure is brand new.
Thank you.
Yep.
Matt, do you have any questions?
No questions, though.
So by way of mentioned MassDOT review and MIPA review, where do those stand? Because it seems it would be helpful to get some of that feedback so that you know what your final layout is, if you are in fact able to use this or not.
Yeah, we were granted a certificate on the environmental notification form on October 18th. We've been given the green light to proceed to what's known as a single EIR, as opposed to going through a two-step process, a draft and final. And that determination was on the basis of the comprehensive nature of the filing. There aren't a lot of technical questions that were raised by DOT. What we're focused on in the single EIR is the disposition of the driveways. They need to understand more comprehensively the functioning of each one, the importance, for instance, of having two driveways along the Route 20 corridor, because principally there's no other way to get a tractor trailer to properly function within the site beyond what we're showing currently as a design with that easterly driveway. They want us to do a sensitivity analysis to understand if a restriction were placed on that central driveway, what that would mean. We've completed that analysis. It will be filed in January. And what that analysis shows is exactly what I've presented to the board, which is it doesn't affect the influence or the operations of the signal. What it does is it diverts more trips to the westbound left turn lane at the signal, which has ample capacity. Its typical queue is 2 to 3 vehicles. Its volumes are somewhere around 60 per hour. It's got a lot of capacity to be able to accommodate all of the left turn movements that would otherwise occur at the driveway. So it's a technical exercise. We call it a sensitivity analysis. They want to understand that prior to going through the access permit process that would precede or follow the MIPA process. So the outcome of that analysis is not going to change any of the findings of what is before the board currently. We're confident that the framework of the site is well established. It's already been reviewed previously with Mass DOT District Office. This is the outcome of several design iterations that led to this optimized design.
Just a question. So the current plan you submitted as part of the ENF environmental notification form to MIPA,
Yes.
that included the central driveway, right?
Yes.
Okay.
This is our what we call the preferred alternative. We were obligated to do an alternatives analysis that demonstrated various configurations of the site.
Yeah.
And this is the one that is deemed the preferred and for all intents and purposes, the proposed option. Right,
So- So as part of the sensitivity analysis that they requested, if it turns out that there's no need for that central driveway, would it be totally not going to be there, or just only right turn out of the site?
Yeah, so we are discussing with DOT the necessity to have an entrance into the site and an exit from the site along Route 20. There are considerations that led to this design that we're going to be discussing with DOT at more length. You will notice a large kind of a blank area here. It looks like a pond of sorts, right? It's a fenced-in area on the right side. That area today is subject to extensive flooding. It forms a natural area where water collects and is designed through Phil's group to accommodate that naturally in that section of the site. We've worked around that element to ensure that the drainage on the property can remain on the property as it does today. What that is obligated is a design that has this easterly driveway for entrance and the central driveway for exit. The central driveway also has the added ability as a second means of entry into the site. There's no detriment to allowing 2 access points to the site. If there's any modification, it would be, okay, we need an exit, we need an entry. The only modification that could possibly come out of this would be to eliminate the entry at that central driveway, which wouldn't make sense. What we've shown here is what we believe will ultimately be approved by DOT, but they are asking the question, do you need 2 driveways? The answer is, yes, we do, because of the particulars of the site, the way that it's designed for water retention, the need for a certain maneuvering area for tractor-trailer vehicles, and the need to exit the property onto Route 20 as any other commercial property along Route 20 has. So it is an optimized design. The potential outcome, again, is, and you'll see in the central driveway, there's a raised island feature there. If that were allowed to function initially, subject to monitoring, and that monitoring determined that there was some operational issue with allowing that left turn, the simple solution would be to add another wing onto that central island to force a right turn. That's the type of process that we're talking about with Mass DOT.
Thank you.
I have another question related to circulation, and I'm struggling with, there's a lot going on in terms of how people are moving around the site.
Sure.
The parking spaces closest to Hartford Turnpike,
Yes.
Are those a necessity? Just, again, thinking as somebody who, like, there seems to be great opportunity for a lot of cars to be moving within that particular location, that I'm just wondering if those parking spaces are an absolute necessity, because I certainly wouldn't want to be walking through there.
Yeah, so I think really part of it's a zoning issue, right? And the need to have a certain number of parking spaces, and Phil can speak to that issue more than I can. But really, that affords the opportunity for employee parking and lower turnover parking to occur, and to free up spaces that are more convenient for customers closer to the building. That's the short, more convenient answer. It's not uncommon for facilities like this to have spaces that are more remote from the building for that type of purpose, that it would allow for the designation of spaces for employee use to free up and make it more convenient for customers closer to the building.
Chris, does the town have anything?
So our office issued a letter, August 29th. A number of those items have been addressed. I would say that, concerns that were noted in that letter, from our office, as well as some of the other, town departments, do, indicate concerns with, left turn onto Route 20. I think that remains the majority of the comments in terms of concerns that, have been raised, but not yet addressed. Certainly that's within the purview of the board to consider, with the details that have been provided this evening. But I think that concern has been raised, so.
Is there a time frame that you're going to hear back from DOT on this?
We intend to speak with them as early as next week, depending on availability. This is a difficult time of year because of the holidays and all. If that doesn't occur in December, it would most likely occur in very early January. Again, we are in the MEPA review process, and part of the process that we use during that evaluation period is to consult with DOT, so there's no surprises, and that we've addressed all of their concerns and issues even prior to filing the single EIR. So we're going to have that consultation in the near term. Ultimately, again, whether that left turn gets restricted or not is immaterial to the outcome of what the analysis that we presented shows. It's really a function of the access permit process ultimately. While we acknowledge the local concern in some respects, I think perhaps the police department was one of the groups that raised the question of left turn, and it's a logical question to ask. That's precisely what we're talking to DOT about, and they will be the arbiter, they will be the decider on that. It is not inherently a fatal flaw for the site if that left turn ultimately becomes restricted, but we don't want to unnecessarily restrict it until we've had a thorough vetting of the issue with them.
Okay. Anything else, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to point, like, in terms of the comment that MassDOT be the arbiter of this, I do want to point out, I do feel that the board has jurisdiction over entrance and exit design of the site. It's critical to the site circulation. Certainly would be interested in hearing MassDOT's interpretation of it, but I don't think that's their sole discretion. I think the board does have purview over the entrance and exits to the sites, and would encourage the board to consider that.
Especially as it relates to what could potentially then go out onto Lake Street.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'd like to ask if there's any members of the public wishing to speak on this item this evening. Sir,
Good evening, Madam Chair.
you could just tell us your name.
Good evening, members of the board. Jared Fiore from Prince LaBelle on behalf of Demolis Supermarkets, Inc. And with me this evening is attorney Carmine Tomas of Demolis and also Robert Nagy of VHB. I believe that you have in the record our letters of December 2nd, Attorney Carmine's letter of October 3rd, and Mr. Nagy's letter of October 3rd as well, and one from August. I think, as you know from those letters, we have two concerns that given the high travel speeds on Hartford Turnpike and the length of signal queues, the left turn movement, especially by tractor trailers onto Hartford Turnpike, shown on the plans has the potential to create substantial safety and congestion issues. And two, that the location of the project's access driveway onto Lake Street, shown on the plans, is very close to the Hartford Turnpike Lake Street signal and has the potential to create serious congestion issues along Lake Street and may have the effect of negating any of the benefits of the currently proposed enhancement to the Lake Street intersection. These concerns that we have are echoed by some of the town departments and Mass DOT as well. As the planning department has pointed out, there's a letter of August 29th submitted where the highway department said that the highway superintendent raised concerns over entering and exiting traffic onto Lake Street. The police department, the very department that is tasked with safety and traffic, identified that it is recommended that the main exit on the Hartford Turnpike be right-hand turn only, given traffic volume and speeds in the area. And the planning department echoed those concerns of the other departments and said the applicant should review opportunities to reduce the number of curb cuts, evaluate right-in, right-only options, and evaluate common driveway opportunities with abutting properties. The applicant should provide evidence of coordination with Mass DOT on proposed designs. Mass DOT has also submitted a letter of October 11th. And quite frankly, I was surprised to hear my brother of the bar, Mr. O'Neill, today say that he was had received positive feedback from Mass DOT, because I don't think that conforms with this letter of October 11th that I have. Mass DOT had said implementing a right-in, right-out restriction at the Route 20 exit could enhance safety by reducing traffic conflicts, as westbound vehicles queued at the signal may block visibility for oncoming eastbound traffic. If left turns are restricted from the driveway, a revised capacity analysis should be conducted, as this would impact the number of vehicles using the Route 20 Lake Street intersection. Moreover, Mass DOT is concerned not just about that one access point, but about the three proposed access points to the site, as they seem unnecessary given the planned use and design. We recommend reducing the number of access points to a maximum of 2. All possible alternatives should be considered, including a right-in only driveway on Hartford Turnpike and a full access driveway on Lake Street. We haven't seen any of those results. Nothing's been done as far as we know. It hasn't been presented to this board. As the board knows, it is obligated by Section 8 F3C by the bylaws to make several findings before approving this site, including that curb cuts and driveway openings are convenient and safe in relation to the adjacent street network. Here, the applicant has not done that. It has not done that. It's asked that you rely on what Mass DOT says, which apparently is some forthcoming decision. Mass DOT may inform your decision, but Mass DOT cannot be substituted for the responsibility of this board, and respectfully, you can't disregard your responsibility to make a decision that curb cuts and driveway openings are convenient and safe in relation to the adjacent street network. I'd also add that I believe I heard that this driveway access on Route 20 and the left-hand turn is going to be immaterial. So if it's such an immaterial point, why doesn't the board just decide to restrict it now at this point? As to the technical aspects, I would ask that Mr. Nagy now speak as to our concerns about the traffic.
Thank you very much. For the record, Robert Nagy with Vanessa and Bruslin, located at 260 Arsenal Place in Watertown, Massachusetts. I'll be brief on this. I don't want to sort of continue to talk a little bit about this, but I do want to throw some technical information in here just for the record. I do believe, and I've read the peer review comments on the traffic study that was submitted to the town by Bowman. I'm in general agreement with everything that they've said in there. I actually do believe that the information and the statistics that are included in the report are reliable. And I think as I look at the plans and I look at the impacts, I get a different set of conclusions from it. And that's where our concern sort of comes from. Specifically, as again, we talked about the Hartford access. I think some information would be helpful here to sort of paint the color here. During the evening peak hour, the queue of traffic that forms from the traffic signal at Lake Street back in front of the project site extends about 468 feet, which is about 100 feet further than the driveway point that's being proposed exists. So essentially, you'll have trucks and cars waiting to turn left out of the driveway, facing, on average, anytime the signal goes red, cars that they'll have to either snake through or wait for that queue of traffic to clear and then deal with traffic that's coming down the hill on Route 20 at an excessive rate of speed. So from our perspective, from a safety perspective, that's a real concern to us, and we've made these comments available to MassDOT as well as we go through that. So as we look at that, it's both it's a combination of the queuing that's happening at the signal on Route 20, as well as the speeds of traffic along Route 20 as well. So during the off-peak periods when there is no queuing there isn't as much traffic, you do have the speed of traffic that comes down the hill on Route 20 that concerns us. Folks taking a left turn out of that driveway and then having to merge into the eastbound direction of Route 20 is problematic in our eyes. Secondarily, as we think about Lake Street, I think that's a different issue. That is an issue that if we solve one problem, may become a different problem altogether as traffic needs to come in and out of there. So that's something that needs to be viewed. It's no surprise, and and I suspect the board knows, there is traffic that queues up, particularly during the busy hours along Lake Street, and similarly would block, extend past this driveway location on Lake Street there. Adding an additional friction point in there in the form of a driveway is going to create some additional nuisances with that traffic operation. Demoulas is engaged with MassDOT and with your town engineer in looking at different options out there. We've come to what we believe is a good solution out there and are starting to advance that, and we're concerned about the impact that this may have on those solutions out there. Again, I do think that there's more opportunities to study this. As Attorney Fiore just mentioned, we're interested to sort of see where the solutions go in this, and certainly reserve our rights and obligations to look at this and have an additional say on that. But those are some of the concerns that we have as we continue to look at this. I did hear Mr. Michaud talk a little bit about the do not block the box painting out there. If that is something that wants to stay out there, and the town is supportive of that, I would recommend it actually extend the entire intersection. As it's drawn on the plan right now, it actually creates a gap in the traffic stream on Lake Street approaching the signal. and would allow somebody to technically sort of pull out and block Lake Street and not be blocking the box in that regard. So little minor changes there that I think would be helpful. In sum, I think it's valuable that we continue to sort of look at this and be provided information as it becomes available to folks, and would be, happy to continue that discussion. We also would like to point out that while the peer review did look at all the traffic issues out here, they did sort of defer to MassDOT as well on the operations of Route 20 in that driveway. It may be helpful, and I may suggest, in my suggestion here, it may be opportunistic for us to sort of ask the peer reviewer to come back and maybe look and opine on that particular issue as well on behalf of the board. So that's the technical elements of my suggestion and talks here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak this evening?
If the board feels that you're not ready to make a decision on this evening, without additional information on the traffic, the left turn onto Route 20 and so forth, I think there might be some benefit to postponing this meeting, wait to see what comes back out of the MEPA process, out of the Mass DOT review. That could be a couple of months, basically. What our hope was that you would not impose a restriction and that it would get sorted out at that level. But if you're not comfortable doing that, then what we would prefer to do, rather than getting a decision which would impose a restriction on that, is to, and without making any commitment, you may do that in the end anyway, but rather than do that now, if we could wait and see what Mass DOT says. And if they come back and they say, we've studied it, we've looked at it, and we approve, I think that might be helpful for the board in terms of your own deliberations. And if they decide that they're not going to allow it, there's really no decision for the board that you would have to make independently of the decision from Mass DOT. And I'm getting the sense that it's probably unlikely, given the testimony that you've heard tonight and so forth, that the majority of the board is going to decide that they've heard enough and they don't have an issue with what is being proposed. So we would much prefer to continue the hearing rather than to get a decision which precludes our ability to have that option and to get the feedback and possible approval from SDOT. So I just throw that out there for your consideration.
No, certainly, I appreciate that. I guess, what is the pleasure of the board? Is that something that you're willing to entertain?
I think we should postpone it.
Yeah, we should continue.
Okay. All right, so if there's no other public comments on this item, I would actually like to ask for a motion to continue this hearing until should we kick it out to February perhaps, knowing that January 2nd is our next meeting? You probably won't be hearing from MassDOT.
Early Christmas. We're not gonna
That sounds like a great Christmas present for you, but I just don't know that that's going to happen. So, so should we look at kicking it out? And Chris, is that something that we can do to say postpone to like the February meeting?
If the applicant agrees, we could go to February, correct?
Would that be something that?
Yes, and if it turns out that, prior to that
Christmas
meeting,
comes
we
early.
need more time, then we could extend further at.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Well,
So what is that February date, if you would?
February 6th.
Thank you. So is there a motion to continue this public hearing until February 6th at 7 PM?
Yeah, I move this proposed gas station proposal be continued to February 6th, 2025 hearing at Municipal Office Building,
Is there a second?
7 p.m.
Is there, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right, next up, proposed warehouse and distribution facility site plan approval, Prologis Inc. This is a continued public hearing. I believe we have a couple of guests with us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Mark Donahue from Fletcher Tilton on behalf of Prologis, Inc. Perhaps a brief summary would make sense since we've been at this for a little bit of time. This is our 6th public hearing with regard to this matter. This began back in June with the joint meeting with the Grafton Planning Board, because as you'll recall, this project straddles the town lines. Since that time, we've had presented to you detailed analysis of the site design and the stormwater retention and maintenance program. All of that has been subject to peer review from Graves Engineering, and after a series of iterations and changes to the plan, we have what would be commonly referred to as a clean letter from Graves, not recommending any further changes or modifications to the plan. We conducted a sound analysis as to the impact of the proposed development in operation on any surrounding properties. That too was submitted to peer review. It was reviewed in detail with you at the scientific level, together with some diagrams that show distances and changes in grades and vegetation and the like. That peer review was also concluded with a clean letter, not requiring any changes to the plan in any fashion. The third area dealt with traffic. We spent a fair amount of time talking about traffic. Got recommended to go back and look at how else Prologis could mitigate the impacts of the development, particularly to the Centec Boulevard Route 20 intersection. After consideration of the comments of the board, Prologis stepped up in November and made a substantial offer of a contribution, a cash contribution, that Prologis would pay the cost of the survey of the site of the entire intersection, would pay to the town a sum that it could then retain consultants of its choice to do full-blown design in coordination with MassDOT of improvements that I would refer to as, or been submitted to you on a concept plan, and which Mr. Michaud can review in more detail, but essentially are improvements to the intersection that are consistent with the 2020 corridor study that were recommended by MassDOT at that time, with the addition of a shared use path for additional vehicles. And Mr. Michaud could certainly review that in more detail. In addition to paying for the design and the survey, Mr. Michaud provided an order of magnitude for that cost of approximately $2.6 million. That amount has been offered as a contribution to the town, and the town is working through making a determination. We're working with the town manager's office and town council to complete a memorandum of understanding by which the timing of that contribution and also the commitment of the town to undertake that contribution and prosecute improvements to the intersection on a specific timeline that works for the project. With that, we hope that we've answered any questions or concerns you have with regard to the site plan approval. Recall that this is site plan approval. The underlying use is permitted as of right. We are here this evening. Mr. Kaminsky from Prologis is here, Mr. Perry from Langen Engineering, and Mr. Michaud from MDM Transportation, and obviously myself. Glad to answer any particular questions the board has as to the project. We have had the benefit and greatly appreciate the opportunity from Mr. McGoldrick to see the draft decision, have weighed in with comments, had an opportunity to speak with Mr. McGoldrick as recently as today. And I believe you have a draft that has gone through some revisions that we've seen and are acceptable to the applicant, but we're glad to discuss any conditions there or any additional conditions or concerns that the board may have, and glad to hear any concerns the board has that would in any way have the board not be in a position to vote affirmatively on site plan approval.
Mr. Donahue, the board has just relatively recently received this draft decision. I guess my question for you is there a deadline, timeline by which you are working on that you're looking to have this approved this evening, or just to see if there's opportunity to give this a thorough review?
Since it is a Christmas season, we do have wishes. It is hoped, and it is presently scheduled, that work would start with mobilization in the last week of December, and work would start in January. That would require the decision to be adopted and filed with the town clerk tomorrow in order to meet that schedule. But that is the present schedule of the development. Mr. Kaminsky could talk in more detail about that. There are, I would suggest, the findings of fact are we've discussed kind of the basis of it. The conditions follow many conditions this board has seen in other projects, most recently in the Clinton Street project, as to the means and methods of protecting the neighborhood during the course of construction. There are a few related to the specific operation, because many of the operational issues are dealt with by the means of the design of the site. And by that I mean, for example, the bifurcation of the driveway system between the trucks and the passenger vehicles for employees is part of the entire plan, so there's not a condition of that. So we would hope that the board would have the opportunity to review those conditions. Glad to try to do it, but that's our desired schedule presently.
Understood. Chris, do you want to talk through some of the conditions?
Sure. So, the draft decision was provided, and we did provide a red line version that was emailed, late this afternoon, and then it's also provided at the board's seats this evening. We do have a clean copy if the board does feel that it's sufficient. Happy to run through some of those red lines. The primary on the first couple of pages is the exhibits. We did have to update that. I noted that when I provided it, that we were still in the process of making sure all the exhibits that we received were memorialized in the decision. In terms of the findings, we had some language that was provided in part from our office, in part from the applicant, in terms of language that the board could consider in relation to the findings. And so we do have that provided, and we're comfortable with what's represented in those findings. I think it summarizes the discussion that the board has had in relation to some of the findings that they have to make. And then in terms of conditions, as noted by Attorney Donahue, the bulk of any other items that either peer review comments requested that they be included, we've incorporated those comments into the decision. The remaining piece was primarily the off-site mitigation for traffic impact. As stated, that would be memorialized in a memorandum of agreement between the select board and the applicant. I was in conversation with town council this afternoon, and we're confident that a agreement is likely to be rendered. If in the unlikely event that agreement cannot be met, and the memorandum of agreement isn't memorialized, or isn't, we do have a condition referenced, and so the applicant would have to return to this board to modify the decision. And at that time, we could consider alternatives for the traffic mitigation piece of it. But as written, I know it did come out late this afternoon, but as written, as drafted, our office is confident in the decision as currently drafted. We're comfortable with the provisions.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just a quick one. Attorney Donahue, I'm assuming that the Grafton Planning Board already approved this one, or are they in the process of approving?
Where we stand with regard to approvals overall is the Grafton Planning Board has approved the plan. The decision has been filed with the Grafton Town Clerk.
Oh.
We're in the appeal period presently. The Grafton Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions both under the State Wetland Act and their local act. That has now expired as far as its appeal period is concerned. The Shrewsbury Conservation Commission has voted to approve, and I don't think conditions of approval have yet been issued, correctly? Not final ones, but we're working with the agent on that. So, from our viewpoint, this is the last required permit, other than expiration of statutory appeal periods.
Okay.
Any other questions on the board? Any questions? Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item this evening? You're all here for it, right? All right, what is the board thinking? Are you comfortable with the opportunity that you've had to review this? Are there any other questions, concerns from Mr. Donahue or Mr. Michaud or anyone that's here this evening that we'd like to get addressed before taking some action on this? Or are we comfortable with taking action on this evening?
I think we can take an action.
You go with that? All right. So I think,
Yeah, so just to reiterate, process-wise, if the board is comfortable with action, I would just request that we move to close the hearing, and then after that, we could deliberate on the decision as drafted.
okay. So can I entertain a motion to close this public hearing?
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All right, great. So now it is to go through any comments, questions, concerns related to the decision. I personally am comfortable with the language that's been presented to us. I'm far more comfortable with the MOA language and knowing that that there is an opportunity, if something goes awry, that it would have to come back to the board. So that's something that I'm certainly comfortable with. I don't know, others have any questions or comments on the items?
The one, in one respect, this decision is slightly different, is that agreement with the town, the between town and the Prologics on the funding or that aspect of it. And I don't know, Chris, if you can go a little bit more into under what situation do these people have to come back? I mean, if they sign, of course, everything is okay, but for whatever reason, if there is some disagreement, if they don't sign, they have to come back, right?
Yeah, so in terms of process between our decision and Grafton's decision, is that the? Yeah, so for those, in drafting this decision, we did consult the Grafton decision as well. I'm fairly confident that there's no conflicts there. We've kind of taken the stance that although it is collaborative, these are separate permitting processes. So if there is a conflict, we would take the similar approach. We would collaborate with Grafton and what the appropriate process is, whether it's returned to one or both boards, depending upon what that conflict is. But in drafting this decision, we did go through Grafton's conditions and mirrored a lot of the ones that were relevant to our process, as well as included our own from, as stated, prior projects that have gone through this process. So.
Does that answer your question, Perna?
Yeah, but my point was more on the agreement with our town, the financial arrangement in terms of providing funding for the design of hiring consultant and the design of Route 20 intersection with Centec Boulevard. So that agreement, when would that be triggered for the applicant to come back to us? If they don't sign, of course, they'll come back to us. Is there any other situations when they have to come back to us?
Sorry, thank you. So the memorandum of agreement, so the condition as we drafted it in relation to the memorandum of agreement, if executed, that would become controlling for that process and those logistics, and would essentially be incorporated into this decision by that condition. If for whatever reason that was not executed, then because that condition is in place, there's the necessity for them to remove that condition as per prior to the issuance of a building permit. And so at that point, that in order they would request a modification of the decision, which would bring it back before this board, and we would have the opportunity to consider alternatives under that modification request.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Only that Attorney Donahue mentioned 2.6, but it's 3.6 million, right?
It's 3.6 in its entirety.
Part of that's the design?
The design's in there also. It may be 2.8 of construction, 8 from, yeah, that's right.
It's in here as minimum of 3.6.
Yeah. That includes the design component.
Okay.
Which is 700, and the 2.9 is, Mr. Michaud pointed out. Okay.
All right. So I guess at this time, I will entertain a motion to accept the decision as presented to us.
Yeah, I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think we're all set.
Great. On behalf of Prologis and the entire development team, thank you very, very much. This was a highly aggressive schedule when we started, and we're only able to achieve it with your cooperation, the cooperation of all the town staff. So thank you very much.
Sure. Next up, we have new business to discuss and vote to approve the 2025 Planning Board calendar. Everyone had a copy of the calendar put in front of them. Any issues? Are we all set with it?
One question on that is July 3rd. I mean, it happens to be the Thursday before Friday, July 4th. That would for most people would be a long weekend. So, do we want to
Long
keep
turnout.
July 3rd or the following Thursday? I don't know. I don't.
You don't want to spend the 4th of July with me? Come on, man. Come on.
I don't know. Just in case I'm leaving. Again, I mean, if suppose if it needs to be changed, can it be done later too, or?
Yeah, we could always change it later if need be, but I'd be happy with either
Yeah,
date.
if it were middle of the week, it's a different thing, but just before coming here, I checked, July 4th happens to be Friday. And this meeting is on Thursday night,
So is that just, can we just make that modification now and just move it to the following week? Or
Yeah.
Are people okay with that?
July 10th it is?
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know if it's okay with everybody,
July 10th.
Ernest got some big 4th of July plans.
If I get
I don't know, I just keep it open.
if I get reappointed, I'm fine with it. My last meeting would be June 5th, so.
Okay, fair. All right, so with that modification, moving it to July 10th, are there any other concerns with the calendar?
No.
All right.
None here.
So do we need to vote on that?
Yeah, I think traditionally we have
Okay, so
voted to
can I get a motion to adopt the planning board meeting schedule with the modification for the July 10th, 2025 meeting?
Yeah, I move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, excellent. Any old business this evening, Chris?
Just,
Oh, sorry.
I know we voted, but do we need to move the filing date too? There's something internally we can do it.
We'll do that,
Okay.
we'll do that as
Okay.
part of that.
Yeah.
Any old business?
So we don't, I did, and I probably should have mentioned it in the staff report, I did want to take some time to recognize that our assistant planner, Louise O'Neill, has taken the position of the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Development. So I just wanted to take some time to note that. She has, in her time, been with us in the town of Shrewsbury, really grown in her ability and responsibilities that she's taken on. We're really happy to see her onboarded in that position and growing with her career with the town. So I just want to take some time to note that. So
That's wonderful.
Yep.
That's great.
So that is with the town of Shrewsbury, right?
Correct, yeah, so we created a new position, Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Development. And so she was an internal applicant, performed really well in the interview process. And, you know, certainly we know the quality of work that she has done and will continue to do. And so now we'll be looking to backfill the assistant position, assistant town planner position.
That's wonderful. Congratulations, well deserved.
Absolutely.
Any other old business? Correspondence, there, just as to note, there is 2 bits of correspondence that were received. Do I have to read that? I don't have to read them.
Yeah, I can just kind of briefly speak to them. So
Sure.
one was a mailed newspaper clipping. It was from an anonymous sender regarding truck exclusions on Lincoln Street and Pleasant Streets. We also did receive the letter dated December 2nd, 2024, from the attorney for Demula Supermarkets. It was discussed this evening regarding 193 Hartford Turnpike.
That's what he mentioned, right?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. If there is nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you.